Emmeline Sawyers. I actually grew up not too far from here. I'm from Waynesboro. I went to Wilson. Yeah, sorry, hope you guys don't hate me because of that. Like she said, I've been competing in pageants for 4 years, and kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys today is about a little bit about pageants, a little bit about my story, but then also disappointment, because I know I'm sure that's something that you guys deal with or struggle with as you're going through cheer. My sister was a cheerleader for years, so I kind of know your world, but also not really. Don't ask me to do a cartwheel or anything. It will not be cute. But yeah, I did write it down because I wasn't able to memorize all this, so bear with me, please. So yeah, I will take any and all questions at the end. Keep them in mind. I love questions. Nothing is too crazy. Anything that I talk about is fair game or college life, literally anything. Are any of you guys seniors? No? Okay.
No seniors.
Okay, no seniors. Okay, then none of you guys are getting ready for college, so that may be irrelevant. Like I said, I went to Wilson. Then after that, I went to Liberty, graduated last December, so I'm a new grad, just starting getting working and everything. So yeah. So like I said, I'm a pageant queen, competitor, college graduate, and a daughter of the one true king. But today I'm going to be talking to you guys just as Emmeline Sawyers. So cheerleading is a unique sport. It's high energy, high pressure, and full of moments where you have to give your all in front of a crowd. Now, I want you to imagine this, and maybe you've experienced it, maybe you haven't, but you've worked for months. You have poured in every ounce of effort, practiced until your muscles ached, and visualized the big moment 100 times. And then the moment comes. The lights are bright, the music is loud, and your heart is racing. You give it your best shot, you leave everything on the mat. And then the results are announced, and you didn't get what you hoped for. Has it ever happened to you? Maybe you didn't make a stunt group that you wanted, or the game or competition didn't go the way that you wanted it to. Or life just seems to hand you the exact opposite of what you've been dreaming of. Well, I know what that feels like, more than once. So I started competing in pageants when I was 18 years old, and that was a lot older than a lot of my fellow competitors. I know there are some pageant girls here in the crowd. Hi. So you guys started a lot younger than I did. I started at 18, so I haven't been competing for very long. And when I stepped on stage for the first time, I felt behind, unprepared, and honestly, just a little lost. My first pageant wasn't anything big. It was 5 girls in my age group at a Moose Lodge up in Elkton, and I had no fancy dress. My dress was from Goodwill. I had no experience and no clue what I was doing. But somehow, I walked away as first runner-up. And for my first time competing, that was amazing. I was so excited. I remember looking at the trophy and thinking, okay, maybe I can do this. And from there, I started entering more pageants with that same sort of small Hotown vibe. And I got a crown a few times, but most of the time it was through process of elimination instead of an outright win. But it was fun. But deep down, I knew that those weren't the pageants that were going to push me and challenge me to grow. After about a year, maybe 4 or 5 pageants in, I decided to try something bigger. I signed up for my first scholarship competition, the Miss Augusta County Fair, and it was a whole new ballgame. It was my first time competing in an interview, and I was terrified. I practiced in the car on the way there, my palms sweating and my voice shaking, but to my surprise, I won that title. And that win opened a world of opportunities. I got to make appearances, meet people in the community, and for the first time, I felt like maybe this wasn't a hobby. Maybe this was something that I could be really good at. And from there, I entered another small pageant and lost, badly. But from there, I met the director of my next big opportunity, a local title in the Miss Virginia America system. And if you don't know, Miss Virginia America is a pretty big deal because it goes on to compete at Miss America, which is actually happening in like 2 weeks. And Miss America has a long history in pageantry, over 100 years. And I won that local title, and I became Miss Fauquier, which meant I could compete at Miss Virginia the next summer. So here is where the overconfidence kicked in. I was only 19, about to turn 20, competing against women who had been in pageants since childhood. And I was the youngest one there. All of them were 3-4 years older than me. And yet I walked into Miss Virginia thinking that I was going to win, for no other reason than I just assumed that I would. And newsflash, I didn't. I didn't even make top 10. I didn't win a single award. I didn't even make finals. And it stung. Partly because I didn't understand just how much work and preparation it took to compete at that level. I wasn't ready. And deep down, I think I knew it. After that, I entered 3 more local pageants in the Miss Virginia America system, and I lost every single one. And By that last one, I was so frustrated, I started wondering if maybe my first big win had been a fluke. Frustrated, I decided to try a different system. That's when I entered Miss Virginia Volunteer in August of 2024. This time, I was determined to prepare, and I mean really prepare. I started booking school visits and community events. By the end of it, I had spoken at 11 elementary schools, meeting over 1,100 students face to face. I stood in gymnasiums and cafeterias looking at hundreds of little faces who had no idea what a Miss title really was, but who leaned forward when I told them that they could do hard things, that being different could be a strength, and that their dreams were worth chasing. And when I wasn't in school, I was in heels, practicing my walk, my turns, my posture, my smile, over and over until my feet ached and I could hear the click of my heels in my sleep. I practiced interview questions in the mirror with friends and yes, even with my cats, anybody who would listen. But it wasn't just about the stage skills. I poured myself into service. I showed up for community events every chance that I got. News interviews, nursing homes, children's centers, anywhere that I could meet people, share my platform, and represent the crown that I didn't even have yet. I wanted to live the role before I ever earned it. And by the time competition week rolled around, I was tired. Yeah, but I was also ready in a way that I had never been before. Every minute of practice, every conversation with a student, and every moment of service work was with one purpose: to be my very best. And when I stepped off onto that stage, it all came together. I gave it everything I had, and I walked off that finals night knowing that I had done my best. And it paid off. I was named second runner-up out of 16 contestants. Not a win, but a huge step forward after not even finaling the year before. After that, I decided to return to Miss Virginia America and ended up winning my favorite title yet, Miss Roanoke Valley, which I will be giving up in 2 months, much to my dismay. That crown came with an amazing scholarship, incredible directors, and a supportive community. And I spent months preparing for Miss Virginia again. Hours every week in practice, service work, wardrobe fittings, and refining every detail. And when the big week came, I felt confident that I could win. But I didn't. I was named first runner-up out of 33 contestants, which is no small feat, but in that moment, it didn't feel like an accomplishment. To me, it felt like coming in last. Still, I decided to give it one last try just 2 months later. Now this was like 3 weeks ago at the beginning of August. This is very recent. I signed up for Miss Virginia Volunteer again, and I was certain that this was the time, and I made it to top 5. And as they started calling names, each one wasn't mine until it was. First runner-up again. And I smiled for the pictures, but inside I was heartbroken. I had been so sure, and I kept trying to remind myself that God has a plan, and I believe that. But it was one of the hardest moments of my life to hold on to that truth. Now, I know that first runner-up sounds like a good thing, and it is, but here's the part that people don't talk about. Being first runner-up means that you were so close. You were close enough to taste it, close enough to picture yourself wearing that crown, and yet you still walk away without it. Twice in one summer. That is a hard pill to swallow. And the funny thing about disappointment is that it's not always loud. Sometimes it's not this big dramatic scene where you burst into tears. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's standing on stage, smiling for photos, and clapping for the winner because you are so happy for her. And then going back to your dressing room where the silence hits you. When I was named first runner-up for the first time this summer, I told myself, it's okay. That just means that God is preparing me for something better. So I packed my bags, I went home, and immediately shifted my focus to the next competition. But then it happened again. 2 months later, I was standing in a completely different theater, wearing the same gown, competing against a completely different group of women. And yet, there I was again, first runner-up. And this time, it was worse. Because deep down, I knew there wasn't going to be a next one. This wasn't one of the moments where you get to say, I'll get it next time. This was the end of the road for that particular dream. And knowing that made the loss feel heavier. It wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was the closing of a chapter that I'd been writing for years. And in that moment, I didn't feel resilient. I didn't feel proud. I felt tired. Tired of pouring my heart into something and feeling like it's just out of reach. Tired of having to explain to people why second place can still hurt. Tired of smiling through something that's done. But disappointment, while it feels like an ending, can also be a teacher. The night after the second time it happened, I sat down and I asked myself the hard questions. Why do I do this? Is the crown the only measure of success? And would I still compete if I knew that I would never win? And the answer I came to surprised me. Yes, I would still do it. Because the truth is, the stage has never been the only prize for me. The growth, the confidence, the relationships, and the chance to use my voice for something bigger. That is the real win. But that doesn't mean I still didn't feel the sting, and I think sometimes we skip over that part. We rush to the everything happens for a reason speech before we let ourselves sit in the this hurts part. But you can't skip the hurt and expect to come out stronger. I realized that disappointment is not a sign that you failed, it is proof that you care. You don't hurt over something that you were indifferent about, and caring deeply, even when it doesn't work out, is brave. For me, resilience didn't look like bouncing back overnight. It looked like taking a day, or 3, to rest, to cry if I needed to, which I did, a lot, and to be honest with myself about what I felt. And then slowly, it looked like showing up again, reaching out to speak to y'all, and then writing this speech, which again, this was just like 3 weeks ago. And saying yes to opportunities that had nothing to do with pageants, but everything to do with growing as a person. Sometimes resilience is glamorous, but more often than not, it's not. It's quiet, it's steady, it's the behind the scenes work that nobody sees. It's trusting that just because something doesn't happen yet, doesn't mean it never will. And here's the part that I want you to hear the loudest. Your value is not determined by the moment that you're standing on a stage or a mat or a sideline. It is not in the trophy, the title, or the applause. Your value is in the way you show up, the way you keep going, and the way you don't let challenges shape you without letting them break you. Coming off of that second first runner-up placement, I found myself asking a lot of big questions about who I am outside of a crown. I started thinking about my life before pageants, before the sparkly gowns and the high heels, and realizing that resilience has been a part of my story much longer than I thought. I spent a lot of my childhood thinking that I was playing a game without ever being given the rule book. In elementary school, I couldn't understand why other kids seemed to just know when to speak up and when to be quiet. I struggled to make friends, I couldn't handle change, and I barely knew how to smile. By late middle and early high school, that difference made me a target. I was bullied, a lot. And not just whispers behind my back, but open, deliberate cruelty. I remember one girl actually pushing me out of my chair in the lunchroom in front of everyone. And it wasn't just embarrassing, it was humiliating. The constant stress and fear actually triggered a trauma-induced stutter which stayed with me for years. Imagine knowing exactly what you want to say, but your mouth won't let the words come out. And the more people stare, the worse it gets. And for a long time, it made me want to stop speaking at all. And for years, I thought that something was wrong with me. I was the too much kid. I was too loud when I was excited, too quiet when I was nervous, and too sensitive when someone said something unkind. And because I didn't have a name for it, I just assumed that I wasn't trying hard enough to fit in. It wasn't until I was an adult that I finally got my autism diagnosis. And I can't even begin to explain the relief that washed over me. It finally felt like getting the missing page out of that rule book. And suddenly all of the things that I had been told were flaws, my attention to detail, my need for routines, my deep empathy, and my strong sense for justice. They weren't flaws at all, they were traits. And traits can be understood, embraced, and even celebrated. For me, my diagnosis wasn't about putting me in a box. It was about finally understanding the shape of the box that I had been in all along. It gave me permission to stop apologizing for the way that I process the world. And here's the part that connects back to resilience. I had spent years believing that I had to change myself to be accepted. But the truth is, resilience isn't about becoming someone else. It is learning how to show up fully as yourself, even when it's hard, even when the world tells you to tone it down. That's why I started openly sharing about my autism diagnosis, including in both of my top 5 questions this year. I wanted people in the audience, maybe a young girl like me, sitting there not understanding why she feels different, to know that she's not broken. She's just wired differently, and that wiring is not a weakness, it is her power. So, why am I telling you all of this? My pageant journey, my autism diagnosis, the bullying, the stuttering. It's not just so you know my story. It's because I know that each of you has faced, or will face, your own version of disappointment. For you, it might not be a crown or a stage, or it may be. It might be working all season for a big competition and then losing by half a point. Or it might be sitting on the sidelines while someone else gets the spot that you wanted. Or maybe it's outside of cheer, feeling left out, struggling with grades, or wondering if people actually see the real you. Disappointment stings. Doesn't matter what form it takes, the feeling is the same, that heavy knot in your stomach, that little voice in your head saying that you weren't good enough. That moment where you think, maybe I shouldn't even try again. But here's what I've learned through it. Disappointment isn't the opposite of success. It's actually a part of the path to success. Every single time I didn't win, every time I felt like I had failed, it was actually preparing me for something bigger. It taught me things about myself that winning never would have. And that's where resilience comes in. Resilience isn't pretending that you're fine. It is standing back up even when you are not fine. It is choosing to keep showing up even when you're hurting, even when it feels easier to just walk away. Think about it like a routine. Sometimes you nail it. Every stunt hits, the tumbling is clean, the timing is perfect. And sometimes you fall out of a stunt, timing is off, and in that moment it feels like the whole thing is ruined. But you don't stop mid-routine. You don't walk off the mat. You reset, you breathe, you hit the next count, and you finish strong. That's resilience. And life works the same way. Resilience isn't built when life is easy. It is built when life is hard. When the routine doesn't hit, when the score isn't what you hope for, when someone says that you aren't good enough, when you're knocked down, like I was literally pushed out of a chair in high school and carried that stutter for years, or when I stood on a gown and clapped for someone else being crowned. But every time, I learned something. Every time, I got stronger. And every single time, I stood back up. Let me ask you something. How many of you have had a disappointment in the past year that really hurt? Yeah. See? You are not alone. And you do not have control over when life knocks you down. But you can always control whether or not you stand back up. And that choice to rise again, to finish the routine, even if it wasn't perfect, that's where real strength is born. When I was standing on that stage at Miss Virginia, right before crowning, I could feel the lights burning down on me. My hands were clammy and my heart was pounding in my chest, and I remember standing there thinking, holding hands with this other girl, it could be me. And all of those months of practice, every early morning, every late night, every school visit, every community event, it all came down to those last few seconds. And then in that pause, you know, the moment right before they call the winner's name, where everything feels suspended. I felt something unexpected. I felt peace. Not because I thought that I had it in the bag. Actually, deep down, I knew that I wasn't going to win. But instead of clinging to that hope that it was going to be me, I found myself doing something that I never expected. I prayed. I prayed for that girl who was about to hear her name called, and I prayed that she would use her crown well, and that she would love people well, and that she would make an impact in her community and during her year. And whispered just between the two of us, that prayer changed me. Because in that moment, I realized something really important. The crown was never the only prize. Now, don't get me wrong, disappointment hit me like a ton of bricks. Smiling for the camera while my heart was breaking was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And then 2 months later, this time, it felt even heavier because I knew there wasn't going to be another competition. This wasn't a not yet, and the finality made it sting sharper because when you know that you don't get another shot, it forces you to ask the question, what now? And that's where the real lesson came in for me. Because even though I didn't walk away with the crown, I walked away with something more valuable, perspective. For most of my life, I thought that winning was simple. You work hard, you prepare, you show up, and if you're the best, you get a crown, the trophy, the title, the medal. Winning meant the spotlight, the applause, and the recognition. But winning isn't always about being number one. Sometimes winning looks like refusing to quit when it would have been easier to walk away. Sometimes winning looks like facing what scares you the most, whether it's a panel of judges, a tough class, or stepping out on the mat for a big routine, and doing it anyway. And sometimes winning isn't even about you at all. Remember how I told you about how I spoke to those 1,100 kids before the pageant? none of those kids cared whether I won a crown. They cared that someone showed up for them to tell them that they mattered, that they could dream big, and that their differences didn't make them less, it made them stronger. And that's a win that no placement or scorecard could ever take away from me. And that's the same for you guys. Think about it for you. You can hit every stunt, every tumble, every count perfectly in practice. But in competition, the unthinkable happens. Someone slips, and you know right then you've lost the chance at first place. And it stings, right? In that moment, you get to choose. You can give up, drop your smile, and walk off defeated, or you can keep cheering with everything that you got, showing that your spirit is bigger than the scoreboard. People don't always remember who got first place, but they will always remember how you made them feel. They will remember the teammate who cheered them on, the leader who lifted them up, and the person who showed up for them. When I look back now, I don't see those two pageant losses as failures. I see them as moments where God reminded me that crowns and titles aren't the only way to define success. Sometimes losing the thing that you wanted most makes room for the thing you actually needed most. So, how do you define winning? Is it only about the score at the end, or is it about the person you become along the way? Because if it's the second one, if winning is about growth and resilience and about making a difference, then every single one of you has a chance to win every single day. Now, I want to pause here because I do not want you to think that I'm saying it doesn't matter if you win. Let's be honest, it does. Winning is important, it's exciting, it feels amazing to see all of the hard work you've done pay off with that top spot, that trophy, that title. And in a competitive environment like cheerleading or pageantry, winning pushes you to work harder, to chase excellence, and to grow in ways that you wouldn't if there was nothing on the line. I wanted to win every single time I stepped out on stage. And if you're honest, I'm sure you want to win every single time you step onto that mat. That's normal. That's good. Goals matter. Drive matters. Winning matters. But it can't be the only thing that matters. If your entire sense of worth is wrapped up into whether or not you win, you are setting yourself up for heartbreak. Because even the best athletes, the best performers, the best competitors in the world, they don't win every single time. Think about the Olympics. Someone can train for 4 years for one event, and in a matter of seconds, a stumble or a slip changes everything. Does that mean that their years of training and sacrifice were wasted? Absolutely not. Winning is a moment. Growth is a lifetime. Chasing victory will sharpen you. It will test your discipline, your teamwork, your focus, and those things matter. But what will really define you is what happens after the scores are read. How do you respond when you win? Do you gloat, or do you stay humble? How do you respond when you lose? Do you crumble, or do you hold your head high and show grace? Let me tell you something a pageant director told me after Miss Virginia. She pulled me aside after everything was over and said, "You were the best first runner-up I'd ever seen." She did not mean my scores. She meant my attitude, my sportsmanship, the way that I treated people after the crown wasn't mine. And that stuck with me, because it reminded me that winning is important, but how you handle not winning might matter even more. And here's where it connects to you guys. Your cheer routines are filled with hours of sweat, blisters, bruises, late nights, and early mornings. You practice tumbling, or do you guys tumble? No? Yes?
Not in our routine.
You guys don't tumble. Okay,
Some
that's
tumble
fine.
like on the side.
You guys do a lot of really cool other stuff. And you drill everything until it's second nature. You repeat the same 8 counts until you can do them in your sleep. You wouldn't do all of that if winning didn't matter. When that moment comes, when you are standing there waiting to hear your team's name called, you don't always have control over the outcome. But what you do control is how you handle it. If you win, do you celebrate with grace? And if you don't, do you carry yourself with that same pride that you had when you walked in? Because that's what people will remember. So yes, go after that win. Fight for it. Train hard. Put in the hours. Dream big. Because winning does matter. But remember, your legacy as athletes and teammates won't only be written in your victories. It'll be written in your character. So, what do we do with all of this? How do we take the lessons of disappointment and resilience and actually turn them into something that we can use, both on the mat and off? Lesson 1, winning still matters. be clear, it's not wrong to want to win. Some people will tell you it's not about winning, it's about the experience. But if that is all that it was, none of us would push ourselves the way that we do. Wanting to win is what keeps us at practice late, makes you do everything just one more time, it makes you polish the routine until it's sharp. Winning motivates excellence, and that's a good thing. But winning can't be the only thing. If your whole worth hangs on a scorecard, then every loss is going to feel like the end of the world. I had to learn that my value didn't come from a crown or a placement. Winning is a milestone, not your identity. Lesson 2, control what you can. When I was competing, I can't control who the judges were, how the other contestants performed. I couldn't make them like me. All I could do was control me. My walk, my interview prep, the way I showed up with energy and poise. And it's the same for you guys. You can't control the judges. You can't control if another team sticks their routine perfectly, but you can control how sharp your emotions are. You can control whether you keep smiling even when you're tired. You can control how you show up for your teammates. And when you put your focus there on what's in your hands, not only will you perform better, but you'll also feel calmer. You don't waste energy on things that you'll never be able to change. Lesson 3, practice bouncing back. Disappointment is a skill. And I know that sounds strange, but it's true. You can actually get better at handling setbacks the more you go through them. So think about it like this. If you mess up a routine in practice, you have 2 choices. You can sulk or you can reset and do it again. If you don't make the lineup one week, you can shut down or you can come back sharper next time. Every single loss is a chance to practice your bounce back muscle. When I lost, especially the second time this summer, it hurt so badly, but it wasn't wasted. Each loss has taught me how to stand up straighter, how to refocus faster, and how to walk off with dignity instead of crumbling. And that is what made me stronger for the next challenge, whatever that may be. Lesson 4, carry yourself like a champion, always. Remember the one director who told me that I was the best first runner-up they'd ever seen? Not because I had the highest score, but because of the way I carried myself after losing. Because I didn't let my bitterness show. Because I congratulated the winner. I smiled and I kept my head held high. But I was also legitimately happy for her that first time. And I was so proud of how I did and knew that God had a plan. And yet, I want you to think about this in your world. If your routine messes up, when your team doesn't win, when people are still watching, teammates, coaches, younger kids who look up to you, they're not just watching your routines, they are watching your actions. And that is your real legacy, not whether you held the trophy, but how you treated people along the way. The way you carry yourself after a setback can speak louder than any title or trophy. Lesson 5, your story is not over. When I lost that last pageant, it felt like the end. Because I knew there wasn't going to be another shot, and that finality made it harder than any other disappointment that I faced. But here's what I didn't realize in the moment. Sometimes the end is just really a new beginning that you couldn't see yet. If I had one, I probably wouldn't be standing here today with you guys. I might not have the chance to encourage some girls who need to hear that they are more than just their wins and losses. Sometimes the setback is really just a set up for the next stage of your journey. So when the routine doesn't go as planned, when you don't get the part that you wanted, when the trophy goes to someone else, remember, your story isn't over. The very thing that might feel like a failure might be what opens the door for something bigger. When I look back at everything, at the hours of practice, the heartbreak, the close calls, I remember something important. Disappointment doesn't get the final word. The final word belongs to you, to how you carry yourself, how you decide to show up the next day, and how you treat the people around you, even in the moments when you're hurting. And that's where real greatness is found. Not in the spotlight, not in the win, but in the quiet decision to keep going with grit, grace, and a little bit of fire in your heart. So as you keep training, competing, and chasing your own goals, I hope you remember this. The mat, the stage, the scoreboard, they don't define you. What defines you is the way you rise, the way you keep pushing, and the way you choose to shine even when the crown or the trophy isn't yours. Because at the end of the day, titles fade, but the kind of person you become, that lasts forever. So the next time you step onto the mat, remember this. Win or lose, you already have the power to walk off